Call the meeting to order at 7, just for the essential of the weather coming up, so I'd like to bump right through this. So if everybody could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. So I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And then can I have a motion for approval of the agenda for tonight?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Nick. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thanks, Pat. And any questions, discussion, anything on the agenda? Okay. All in favor? Okay. And then we have public input and announcement. And I don't have anything that was sent, but do we have a list?
Gary would like to speak. Yep.
Okay. Go right ahead, Gary.
Should I stand or
It
Up to
doesn't
you.
matter.
For those who don't know me, I'm Gary Fredette. I'm also, I worked for the Wallingford School District for 27 years as a buildings and grounds supervisor. And I'm also the fortunate husband of one of your fellow board members, Patricia Bond. I'm here tonight because of a concern I have with the locked emergency egress gate at the Wallingford Elementary School playground. Since September, I've been trying to get an answer as to why it makes sense to lock an emergency egress gate, but I am still unable to come up with a legitimate answer. I have followed the chain of command from the Wallingford Elementary School principal, board members, Buildings and Grounds Committee, superintendent, and now the MRUUSD school board in search of an answer. In my capacity in the Buildings and Grounds at Wallingford Elementary School, I was responsible for having the gate in question installed at its current location. And to put everything in perspective, we're talking about a gate that's an 8-foot tall chain link fence that runs the whole western perimeter of the Wallingford Elementary School playground. Part of my duties at Wallingford Elementary School required me to be on the committee that wrote emergency and safety plans. And I was required to attend multiple seminars for that purpose, Homeland Security, State Police, multiple seminars, because my job was to do that. None of these seminars ever hinted at chaining an egress gate locked. It only encouraged you to make all the available accesses available so you could escape harm's way if you had any issues. The emergency egress gate in question was put in its current location to allow students and staff to get out of harm's way and create a corridor to Route 7 in a situation where there was an emergency in the parking lot at the school or on Route 140 East, which runs along School Street in Wallingford. If Route 140 East was closed, we could bring buses from Mill River Union High School, we could bring them to Route 7 with 140 closed, and we could still evacuate students from Wallingford. The only explanation I've received is that the superintendent reached out to Visbit and was informed that the gate could remain locked or unlocked, but it recommended signage if it was unlocked. Signs weren't ordered and signs were installed, but the gate still remains locked. I was informed on a certain day that the gate was going to be unlocked, and then it was discovered that the lock on the gate was installed by an abutting neighbor, and it wasn't even the school's lock. This is an abutting neighbor with a lock on our emergency school egress gate. I did reach out to that neighbor, whether it was proper for me to do that or not. I met with a neighbor because I know her. I'm an elected official in the town of Wallingford. She worked for the town of Wallingford. I know her in that capacity. So I stopped by her house one day just to ask her why this gate was locked, why she had it locked, and if she was willing to unlock it. I certainly made perfectly clear to her when I walked and met her that I had nothing to do with the school. It was just a personal thing. I was wondering why we had a gate locked that would allow kids to get out of harm's way in the situation. We had a good conversation. her biggest concern was the fact that she was afraid that somebody would come onto her property and she would be liable for any injuries that may happen to them. Well, that's very simple. You tell the kids not to go onto the property, and I don't think they do go onto the property. In finding out that there was her lock, I guess it was decided that they were gonna keep the lock on it and bring it to Buildings and Grounds to make a decision of what they should do, which is probably the right thing to do, there's no doubt about it. Buildings and Grounds met, I read their minutes, and they came to the decision that they would continue, they would bring it to the full board to have the neighbor, a budding neighbor, remove their lock, and the school would put their own lock on that gate. Putting a lock on an emergency egress gate makes absolutely no sense at all, especially when considering nobody has a reason why it was ever put on there, except for the neighbor didn't want kids to come onto her back lawn. So I think that I've reached, I think the only solution, well, after meeting with the neighbor, I met with the superintendent and Tim Hart. I was told it would be brought to the Building and Grounds Committee, and here we are today. To me, the only solution is clear, that we have the neighbor remove the lock and leave the chain off the emergency egress gate, and use it for emergency use only. As far as I'm concerned, putting a chain lock on an emergency egress gate to allow children to get out of harm's way is no different than putting a chained lock on a fire escape door. Why not make it safer? Why restrict being able to get out there when you can make it easier to get out the playground? Other than that, if there's ever any questions anybody have into anything that was done down there that I did, or that any solutions I think could work out better, I leave myself available. That's it.
Thank you. We're gonna hold all board discussion till after everybody's done with public comment. Next.
My name's Naomi Bombardi Wilson. I'm here to represent, I guess, the parents of the PTO for Wallingford Elementary and other parents who are concerned about the state of the school in general. I believe I brought a lot of this up at the Building and Grounds meeting. The issues were a washing machine in the cafeteria, which I'm happy to announce has been ordered and is coming on the 12th, which is really awesome to hear and see progress made from that. Then there was the removal of the outbuilding and the replacement of floors and some windows. And I understand there's bids happening for the outbuilding, but I'm just curious as to where it actually stands as far as what happens when we get those bids. Is it approved? Will the money be approved?
So that's actually a really easy question. The Buildings and Grounds Committee had given Tim the go-ahead to get bids, and then Buildings and Grounds needs to approve the one bid that goes to the full board. So at this point, the Buildings and Grounds Committee has given him authorization to move forward on the project. We just have to do the paperwork shuffle to make sure that we're doing things above board to get full approval on that. So when things start happening that way, I have never seen it that it goes to the board and the board says no after they've told him to start getting bids. So we're just going through the process that, the state
If
of
it's
Vermont.
above, what's the threshold, Brian?
If it's above $15,000, it has to go to the full board. But
Oh,
if
so
it,
the first bid, I think, and Tim's not here, and I could look it up, I think the first bid came back at like 14.5, so it's not above the 15. but it's
However-
like-
Is that to
however,
remove-
I'm going to interrupt you.
It's like right at that threshold, but we need to get 3 bids, which is like the painstaking, like, we
Waiting
need
for
to get
the
one
next
from
bid.
you, one from you, one from you, and then we can say, that's the guy.
Tim actually had one bid on that outbuilding months ago and was just waiting for the go-ahead to keep working, get more bids, bring it to the full board. So he had been working on it even, I think, like late last spring, just because it had been something we were talking about. I'm going to it's absolutely true that things come to the board if they're above $15,000. Anything that is unbudgeted comes to the board, though, no matter the value. And this fund that we're using for these projects is a building fund, so nothing is budgeted in that fund, actually. So anything from that fund is going to go to the board, even if we're taking $200 out of it, which is a kind of funny thing. But because voters put that money in that fund and we don't designate what it's for, it all comes to the board. That way folks actually know what it's being used
And
for,
what
if
is
that
that
makes sense.
budget?
There might be around $700,000 in that account right now.
And where does that come from, that money?
So that would typically be when you look at the ballot and you're voting on the full local budget, there's usually a second item that says move 250, 300, 350,000 into the building fund of unanticipated surpluses usually.
So like the walk-in cooler is being bid up on as well,
Yes.
which is obviously
Yes.
going to go over the
Yes.
15,000.
Yes.
Okay,
The
and-
B&G had told Tim, work on the walk-in, work on the outbuilding, and then work on Shrewsbury heat pumps. Those were the three big ones. And then they said, we want you to be ready to look at replacing carpet across the district, including Wallingford. Not with new carpet.
Oh, okay.
But with,
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
whoa.
no. Nobody wants to do that.
Like, that would be awful.
No. So Tim is starting to do the work on the carpet, but that one's going to be a little further down the road than the outbuilding, the walk-in, and the Shrewsbury heat, if that makes sense.
Is it going to be down the road because it's combining all the other schools being replaced?
It's
too?
going to be down the road just because the capacity of doing the paperwork and finding folks, and you spend a couple of hours. Well, like the Shrewsbury heating project, for example, we have to work up a request for proposal. We have to post it in the Rutland Herald. So just prepping the documents to even get that in the Herald and have a packet to give to any interested contractors, that'll take Tim a day. And that's when he's not fielding calls for this or that. So it's just, I think, capacity of being able to pull all the projects together. If we could do them all at one time, that would be fantastic. We just don't really have the staffing to be able to be working on all of them.
And
at
it's
the
also
same
for the
time.
carpeting specifically, is there's going to be asbestos abatement. So that's like, you can't do that in-house. So
That's a
like,
bigger
even that
project,
makes,
yeah.
it's a bigger project and
point.
also makes
Yeah,
the
good
timing
point. Yeah.
more challenging.
So if we could do them all now, fantastic, we'd be trying. We just can't tackle them all at one time, unfortunately.
Are volunteers allowed to offer their assistance to help Tim with paperwork?
Sure, folks can help. Sometimes it gets so technical, and the way I explain it to people when people would ask to help me with like tech stuff, for example, I would say to folks, I love that you want to help me. When I sit down and show you how to do it, I'd be done with it. So some of it is just so technical and so picky that if it were like, hey, here, can you collate all this stuff? Anybody can collate. But it's actually, hey, we need to get the contract form from Visbit. We need to go through the form and put in all our details. And, Tim knows where those details are. You might not. I appreciate it, and I'll ask Tim if there are some volunteer things that folks could pitch in on. I'll ask. It might not be a lot, though, but I will check.
A little bit helps.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate the offer.
Thank you. Next. We have anybody up?
No, these wonderful folks are here for math, so we'll hear from them in a bit. Can you give
any-
me your first name one more time?
Naomi?
You want to
Naomi.
respond?
Board members want to respond to what Gary had said.
So our investigation and findings on the gate is that it's, say that again?
You just have to talk louder.
So our investigation and findings on the gate is that it's not currently listed as an egress or an emergency evacuation, which is one of the reasons we're proposing that the ownership of the lock be granted to B&G and the principal, so that we don't have any ill will with the neighbor, because as you dig into it, the gate is actually not on Wallingford property, it's actually sitting on the neighbor's property.
I don't believe, I have to disagree with that. That gate was, that fence was put up in 1969. or prior to 1969 in Wallingford, they didn't start zoning until 1972. So that fence was there before there was any zoning in Wallingford. So if her contention is that that fence doesn't leave a 48-inch, what do they call it, setback, and it's on her property, that would be grandfathered anyway, so that wouldn't be in effect. So I don't know where that information has come from, and now, as a matter of fact, in the new zoning in Wallingford, they're changing the setback to 30 inches. So her contention is that she believes that that fence is on her boundary line because she saw a metal stake that was in the ground back by the fence, right where the gate is, right under the gate. I have a picture of it on my phone. That metal thing was put in there when the fire district ran the water line for the town through her property and up to the school property, and they put that there to mark where the water line was. That's the only, I feel that if she's gonna make that accusation that the fence is on her property, then it would be up to her to show that the town, that the school had a fence on her property, rather than us having to say, well, we're gonna stay away because you said the fence was on our property.
So,
And all
can
we're
I-
doing is all we're doing is we're making one less area where kids can get out of harm's way, because that west side of the playground is a fishbowl. The fence, like I said, is 8 foot tall, and it's the sole side of the west, and there's no way out of there except for that gate that we put in there. I believe it was recommended from the state that we put that in there at the time, but now it doesn't seem to be important. That's, the only way you can get out of harm's way if you're on the western side of that playground is to run towards the school. So in the situation of an active shooter, a gas truck delivering gas to the school that may have a problem in the parking lot, a fuel tanker, whatever it might be, in order to get out of that area, you have to run towards the danger. So just by having that fence
Or
unlocked,
walk around the fence.
you can't walk around the fence.
If you go from the gate and you go 100 feet north, you can walk around the fence.
Or
So
you
do
can-
we
or you
know
can
what-
put the fence open and walk through
do
it.
we know if the gate is actually on that neighbor's property, or is it Wallingford's property? That
That-
school's property?
I think that is ambiguous. We don't know that. But what's important is right now,
The
Then we'll
the
just go cut
recommendation,
the
the
lock.
recommendation is that the key in the whole of Wallingford, not in the neighbor.
I will go ask the neighbor to take the lock off of it for the safety of our children.
I don't think.
But I
the-
don't think that's the problem
I don't
right
think the
now.
neighbor has an issue with it being our lock. I think that was.
It's her
The
lock
na-
right
the neighbor-
right now.
the
I don't
neighbor-
think she has an issue with
the neighbor
taking
would
hers
like
off
the
so that
gate
we can
closed.
lock it. Yeah.
So we keep it
Yeah, I'd like to
closed.
say something when it's my turn.
it can be your turn, I guess.
Go right ahead.
I think that there's absolutely no doubt that that gate should be unlocked, number one. Number two, it should have a sign on it, a big sign facing in towards the playground that says, emergency exit only, do not pass, or words to that effect, so that it's totally clear to the students that they're not allowed to use it except under emergency circumstances. But the idea of having an egress gate that allows students to escape in event of an emergency that has a lock on it is a terrible idea.
It's not
It's-
actually
it's
an
not-
egress.
it's not an egress.
That should ever happen, and the gate was locked. I mean, I just can't even imagine the fallout from that
It's
situation.
not-
Might I recommend the board to take this up during agenda building to build time
Yes.
in an agenda to discuss it?
And in the meantime, are we going to unlock the gate?
Meantime, can somebody please email me the
In the
neighbor?
meantime, we're gonna follow what Buildings and Grounds told us.
They were bringing it to the board at some point. That was what was in their minutes.
My understanding was, as of this point,
I
Buildings
just want
and
to go on the
Grounds.
record saying that lock should be removed, regardless of what Building and Grounds said. It's crazy to have. something
Regardless of what
that's
kind of gate
installed
it is.
As an emergency exit lock.
Well, right.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, and well, we, during right now, you can't make any actions.
No, we can't. No. We're still in public
That
comment.
need to be warned on an agenda.
Yes. So we will add it to agenda building, and if somebody could just sending the
Andrea, can I have just one
information.
more word? Just one more word?
Yep.
Egress is just a word. It's a gate to allow children to get out of harm's way.
So can we take egress out of the whole equation when we talk about the gate?
Don't
Just
call
because
it an emergency escape gate. I don't care what you call
we
it.
just call it a gate for
Egress
me?
is a word. If we're gonna quibble about whether it's an egress and whether egress is written in, the word egress is
We're-
written into a plan or not, whether we're gonna unlock a gate to let children get to safety, that's, makes no sense to me.
So thank you, Gary. Get it on the agenda for next meeting, which is in 2 weeks. And along with, are you Chair of B&G? Along with Nick and I, send please the email us the information,
Brian has the person's information because
the neighbor.
Kim heard us talk to that.
Okay.
I have lots of information.
And you have lots, okay.
Yeah, I think B&G.
Then we will, yeah. We need, just to get it off of a gate. I'm not saying any other
But we
kind of.
can't unlock it until this is
We-
solved.
We have to talk about it at the full. This is just public comment, so we
I
can't
hope
make any
nothing happens
actions.
Tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, that's all. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about.
Okay,
Can't take action. I know.
you have it on there.
Yep.
All right, so, thank you, everybody who spoke. I need approval of the minutes from 11:20's meeting,
I'll make that motion.
and do I have a second? I am actually abstaining because I was not present. Len seconds. Any change, discussion on those minutes? Okay, all in favor? You have unanimous, Rebecca, except for me abstaining.
I wasn't at that meeting, so I'm going to abstain.
And Stephen abstaining. So Andrea and Stephen are abstaining from it. Okay, so now we're on to math.
Hey, Aaron.
There you go.
I guess first I have to say thank you guys for giving me a few minutes of your time to let us and other departments have a little bit of a voice. You guys, it's very much appreciated, the last purpose that they're here.
Yeah, I think so.
Very nice, thank you very much. I guess I would like to start off, I broke it down to like two things. Positives that are going on with us, with our department. First I said concerns after positives, and I was like, well, let's change it to wish list. So for the positives for us, there's a bunch of things, but so last year we had put out for a new math teacher, didn't end up getting one, but we were able to figure some things out with another new hire. But even without that, and we also lost Cindy Jarvis, who taught our personal finance classes, we were still able to keep 2 of those personal finance classes, which has been my goal for a very long time, is to build that program up. So I'm glad that we still have that going on. We had an influx of students in the middle school that were in our Pathways program. And so instead of, typically we've always had like 1 consumer math group for those students, we were actually able to have 2 of those, one for a middle school only, and then the high school one. That's going to help us better keep track of where they are every year versus them repeating some of the same things over and over and over again as they go through, so we can keep track of it that way. We were able to buy 10 AP Calculus textbooks to replace my very old, aging ones that more match what the calculus curriculum puts out by the College Board, so I'm very much appreciative of that. And then we were also able to purchase another set of graphing calculators. We had been running low. Now, each one of our math classes, our teachers, we have at least 1 classroom set of those for the students to use. What else? Oh, this year, this will be new, every year we do a UVM math contest. And this year, there is a group of students who actually want to put together a little club and prepare for that UVM math contest. So I love seeing that interest in them wanting to take on that challenge, because it is a very, very, very difficult test. So that was a very bright thing to see. Those are most of the things that I wrote for positives. Do you want to keep going with positives, or you just want to add in when we go as you want to?
just said it, you keep going.
Okay. So those are my thoughts, and there probably are others, but right now I'm not thinking of those. My wish list, our wish list. First, our desktops are aging. We have very old smart boards. I think the smart board that I have, Bernie Peatman's name was on it, if anyone remembers him. So very, very, very old. And the math department, especially the three of us up in the high school, all of our stuff is in a notebook file, a specific program. Everything we do every single day, every day in all of our classes, we're using that smartboard, that notebook. I know our district has been purchasing the new TV screens and then using the Chromebooks, but that sophomore doesn't work with Chrome. And so one of our asks the last couple of years as we've seen that progression was, is there any way that the three of us could get a new smartboard instead of the TV screens? And then also replace our desktops, because I know that was kind of like a goal also to eliminate those, but we realized that we can't eliminate, we can't switch completely over to Chrome. Aaron has a new desktop.
So yeah, the tech department got me a new desktop because my old one literally died while he was trying to help me do something. And it really is necessary because we have a number of programs that only will run on a computer. It will not run on a Chromebook at all. And we spend, our budget goes towards these programs that we use every single day. So getting that new computer made a world of difference in my classroom and allows me to actually use my smartboard more. I still can't do everything with it that I used to be able to do, but it definitely it is a marked difference.
And as I said, I personally have years and years of stuff in a notebook file, and it would take me years and years to transfer it over to forms, programs that we could use on the TV screens and the Chromebook stuff. So that was like a wish list. It was like if we could just get 3 of those instead of the other screens that we are purchasing.
The other thing about the new smart boards though, because I think a big push with getting rid of the smart boards before was because they needed projectors. The new smart boards do not require projectors.
Right, yes.
So that actually like eliminates that, I thought, just so that you know.
And again, I put out an email to the whole department. One of the other things, I know you guys are looking at the cell phone policy for that.
Yep,
Absolutely. From the math firm, we fully support eliminating cell phones, putting a stop to those, whatever that looks like, for sure. And another question was, I feel like we've probably put this out there a few times, but the need for a math interventionist in the K-6 schools specifically. I'm not sure when the last time was that we did put one out there.
It's been discussed actually in finance
And I
this
know,
year.
like,
Yeah.
you know, if you go to School Spring now, like the main, like, job that's on there is for math interventionists as well too, so it's kind of hard to find them as well too, so I get that, but we're definitely seeing a need for that.
The draft budget right now, finance has been talking about 2 math interventionists actually.
That's as much as I can fit on mine. I know Erin has a few things, I don't know that she wants to.
I just wanted to share a couple of things that I think are important for you guys to understand from a math perspective. I know that you look at the state test results every time they come out, and it appears when you look at those state test results, maybe that our students are not successful in math in the 9th grade. I would like to just let you know that in looking at the state test, it is a test for Algebra 1, and we teach Integrated 1. It's a completely different curriculum. So over half the test last year is not taught in our curriculum until kids take Integrated 2. But they take the state test their freshman year before they take Integrated 2. So that's kind of,
Never mind. Kimberly had her hand up.
Sorry, I got a hand
Okay.
popping and going.
Okay. So that's just, I think it's important for you to understand. I think that our students did amazingly well on the test, considering they hadn't even been exposed to half of the material yet. We had a number of students who did quite well on it. Most likely, those are the kids who are in honors 1, 2, because they actually see the curriculum. That's in their curriculum. And then, you know, the other kids, the fact that they were even trying and they really attempted the test was amazing, since they don't know what they were looking at.
And is that new? Is the new test changing to that? And
No,
it used to not be, or is this always how it
When it
has been?
was SBAC, it was a different type of test. There was some of that material in it, but it wasn't so focused on the, it's really quadratics is what it is, if you know what that means. Whereas the new test, it's heavy, like half of the curriculum. And we have asked as a department multiple times, different people, could the state actually get a test for over half of the districts in this state actually teach integrated one, or the integrated curriculum? So it's messing with all of us if you're looking at those results. So I think it's important for you guys to understand that. And it's not the fact that, you know, the kids really don't know what they're doing, it's that they haven't learned it yet. It's not their fault that they don't know yet, but they will get it.
When we talk about
I was
those
gonna say, we
assessments,
know.
we try real hard to take them with a grain of salt and look at a couple of different things at the same time. It's good to hear from you some of the challenges with that state data and what it does or doesn't say about our students.
Go ahead, Nick.
I'll just echo what Brian was saying. Brian and Jody do a really good job at informing the board to look at the leading and lagging indicators on our local assessments versus our state assessments. And it's good to say it in a public atmosphere like this, because not all of our community understands that the state test is one instance in time, and it's not always on stuff that our community or our students are actually knowledgeable on.
And the most
So-
important assessment that either of you give is the one that you put together and you gave on Friday, not any standardized test. And that's what we try to,
Yeah, we definitely look at it with very open eyes.
That's awesome.
so good to hear that from you too.
The other thing that I know that there's been talk about class sizes and, you know, looking at our budget for the next year and what things look like. And I think there might be, I don't know, I just feel like this is another thing I'd like to share. As a math department, I feel like we all are united that our common goal is what is best for kids. 100%. Like, all of our decisions that we make in our department, and I'm not saying that other departments don't do that as well, but we think about the kids first. So this year we have 3 integrated 1A classes. And we have 1 integrated 3 class. My integrated 3 class is a large class because it makes sense. They're at a college prep level, they're ready to go. You can have 1 large class of that. You don't need 2 kid classes. When we have integrated 1A, these kids need a little bit more support. And we have, most of the time, we don't have any professionals, special educators. There's no help in the classroom. So having 1 class where we could have potentially, 15 kids total, if we had all those kids, that would be a class of 15. It's super hard to actually teach that class. So we actually separate those classes into much smaller classes because of student need. And we have a little bit larger classes because students can handle it. And it makes sense. It prepares them for what they're going to be doing after high school. So I think that if you look at class sizes and you look at like how we break down what classes we offer, we really try to look at what's best for kids. And it might at first look like, well, why do you have 3 of that class when you could just have them in 1 room?
And they don't look at that level, actually.
Okay.
What I bring to the board is more around average sizes, not around, so we don't have conversations around why are there 8 in this class and 20 in this? That doesn't seem right, because what I hear you saying is some classes need to be 8.
Right.
Some can be 25.
Right.
You know, and that you know that and can sort through that, and you do that scheduling with the guidance office here. We've kind of gone that direction.
We kind of know.
And I've nudged the board to say, whoa, 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 that's too far into the weeds, because you can't always look at a class and see the number and know why it is what it is. And if you're looking at 100 classes in the school building, there are 100 questions you probably have that we can't answer. If we look at an average, and an average is in line with the state, wow, doesn't look like we're going crazy, and it doesn't look like we need to be thinking about cuts. So they're doing more like bigger picture, if that makes
I
sense.
just
So it's
feel
great
like-
for
I
them
just
to
think
hear
it's
that from
Well,
you
in
too.
reality is, we may see our state numbers, this class size, we have 3 of this class size. We know the nitty gritty of why those classes are that small, or why that class may be a little big and stuff like that, because we all ask the questions out of all the rest of it too. So we
But
we
good-
completely
good to
hear
hear
you
from
and
you.
we understand. Yeah, we know.
I will say, I guess I'll add to it, and I totally hear everything you're saying, and I suppose, because I know like she brought up 1A classes, but every year we also get to worry with our AP classes. Because they're very small, and there's like, well, why don't
Yep.
those kids do dual enrollment or early college? Our biggest push is like, we don't want those kids to go, honestly, like, we'd love them to be here, like, those are our students that are actually very involved in the school and keeps things moving on. And if you look at those classes, like, if you think of 10% of a class as an AP class, that's doing pretty well.
Mhm.
And if you look at our numbers, that we're right about there, or even a little bit higher, so we wanted to just also mention that as well, too.
Yeah. Oh, great. Kimberly had a question. She was wondering, when you were talking about math
was gonna say,
interventionists.
the hand kept
you were-
going
You were
up and
talking
down.
about elementary math interventionists,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
That was her question. Did you hear that, Kimberly?
Yeah, I'm sorry for the weird answer. I think I was just trying to put something in the chat.
Nope,
and
all
I don't
good.
know how the chat works.
All good. And it's,
Sorry if it was distracting.
We saw you.
no worries. It's been a while, but I'll remind folks, we try not to use the chat, just because the chat's not always accessible for everybody everywhere. But totally fine.
Like, I don't have it up, but Brian does, so I can, look at what he's doing.
All good. Aaron, did you have more that you wanted to share?
No, I think that, I'm really happy that you guys even want to talk to us, just like, and you want to hear what what's happening in our classes and things.
And they want to hear the good and the bad. So we appreciate that you're bringing the things that are positives and the things that are on the wish list too.
Yeah, thank you, wish list.
Yeah, I
Not
like the
necessarily
wish
bad
list.
list,
Yeah,
but-
yeah.
Every department needs to give us a wish list after they give us our presentation, so that we can see it.
Brian, let me ask you, and this deals with math and class size. I mean, I heard that the state is looking at addressing budget issues through class size.
The state might institute, but I would bet, and I could be wrong, and there's a reason I don't actually bet in real life. I would wonder if the state wouldn't give you hard and fast requirements for elementary, and then an average number to shoot for in the high school. Because in the high school, at the elementary level, when you go, you've got a class of 5 and a class of 20, well, that doesn't seem right.
Right.
But at the high school, I do think there are far more variables and reasons for why you will have a class of, 60 kids, because sometimes band does that, So I think if you put a max class size that's rigid for high school, then all of a sudden you're harming your arts program. If you put a minimum that doesn't account for some of the classes that we have to offer certain ways for certain student needs, I think we get into trouble, so.
And I just wanted to be clear, I don't agree with it, but I always get a little nervous.
They are
when
having
the
that
state
conversation.
is saying,
Having that conversation.
it just bothers me that,
Yeah.
it's one,
Yeah.
they mention class size and they mention healthcare costs. Well,
Yeah.
Those are 2 totally different things.
well,
And the
but
healthcare-
healthcare is, I digressed.
Yeah,
Yes.
let's ask them questions if we have them before we
Yes.
dive into healthcare.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
Regarding the math interventionist, what is the status on that? I know that when we moved here a year ago, August, and my son was testing at a 6th grade level and 4th grade when we got here. And apparently, the majority of his class, the present fifth grade at Wallingford, can barely do third grade math. And he's getting bored. And there's nothing, I mean, they don't have extra help to like lift those other guys up. So is there?
That is in the draft budget right now that the Finance Committee is going to look at next week. There are 2 elementary math interventionists. Right now, we don't have a math intervention program. And Shane was kind of alluding to this a little bit prior. When you go in School Spring, everybody's trying to hire math intervention because for a lot of years, everybody was investing in reading intervention. Post-COVID, we've seen that math scores actually that's the place where folks took the hardest hit. Where we were maybe thinking literacy was going to be the bigger problem, actually it ended up being math. So I think everybody is looking at trying to bolster what they have or put things in place where, you look across the state, there are places that have math interventionists, but not nearly as many as have reading interventionists. We actually have 5 reading interventionists right now. We're pretty lucky to be able to do that. Now we're looking at math. So
And part of that
it's an
too
ongoing
is
conversation.
We are, for the language in general is like we did just change the elementary language program just shifted in a very large way. So having those interventionists is really helpful, especially in the split grade classes and everything like that. And so this year we heard from people at these community conversations saying we want to see more math interventionists. As a board, those are the things we need to hear. Otherwise, we won't take action on it. Because if we're not hearing it, then we are not going to, put money towards it. And so that's, we need active parents, we need active committees and chairs to inform us about the needs. And so we really appreciate you coming.
And those interventionists are shared?
That would be the plan, and it would likely be split 2 elementary schools each. Not ideal. I think the ideal, we talked about at Finance Committee, the ideal would be 4, which is closer to what we have for intervention, because we've done that before. We've tried some of that, and we kind of found out that it's hard when people are split, that you really don't get, you don't get 50% and 50%, you get kind of 40% and 40% because the logistics of being split between buildings. So the efficiency is lower.
But the reality is the budget has to pass. And so we have to make moves where we can. And so that's part of the constraint. We'd love to have, as much interventionists as we could.
Hey, if we could hire 10, fantastic. But
If there was 10 out there.
yeah, if we don't pass a budget, we can't hire any, which that's the tricky part of looking at tax rates and hearing from the community and seeing where our voters are. And we always want to think first about what do our students need, and then we have to think about, okay, is this are our needs going to be met? Basically, and practically, if voters say no, we're more likely in rougher shape than we were, unfortunately.
One more question.
Yeah.
So where we moved from, foreign language started in 6th grade.
Yep.
And it was 6th grade is when it began. You had a choice between French, German, Spanish, whatever, Chinese. Where does it, because I'm new here, so I'm totally ignorant. Where does it start here? Because the schools are also split up.
Here we're starting in 7th grade.
You start in 7th grade. Okay.
Yeah. And I would absolutely love to answer any questions you have if you give me a call.
Okay.
And no problem asking them now, but we want to respect their time too and try and stick to our agenda a little bit.
Thank you.
Yep. Any questions for our wonderful math department representatives?
So you mentioned that your AP math books got replaced, and I know during COVID, because of money, we got more textbooks in general, but what's your state of textbooks in general? Do you have textbooks for your classes?
So we have a couple classes that don't have textbooks, but they purposely don't have textbooks. I teach 2 classes that are student-based. So I assess the students that come in, and the curriculum is created, it's a different curriculum potentially every year, based off what they need. So those programs that we pay for, that we need the computers for, that's what I use to help create that. So we do have a few classes that we don't purposefully have textbooks for, but we have the textbooks for our integrated program we have, and I have stats books.
Right,
They
so-
probably probably the next round of statistics though, AP statistics, I'm probably gonna need to get a new batch because they're really
They're probably
old.
pretty old as well, too.
How old's really old?
Well, the program started in 2010 and they were bought in 2010.
Okay.
But AP stats, the curriculum is changing, it's going to be
Evolved.
changing, it's not 100% yet,
Okay.
but it's not like calculus changed.
Yeah,
You
well,
got-
and
you guys-
the format of the AP testing, which, right, is the goal for those students taking that as well too, has changed. And so the textbooks
Right.
have not matched. Now there are College Board AP-specific textbooks that meet those needs, so.
Currently, my
Okay.
stats book meets the need for our audit, so it's okay for right now, it's not an emergency or anything, but,
But it will be, we'll get
But
it. We'll be
leave-
thinking of it in the future.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And something to keep in mind, because finance is looking at this next week, we had talked about the $25,000 that the high school has had to sort of rotate through departments to go, hey, maybe science department needs a lot this year, but won't for 4 years after. Maybe math needs a lot this year.
We
With-
benefited from that this year.
Yeah, some of those purchases have been from that. That is in our budget proposal still, going forward. So that would
Okay.
be something that, we can try and be strategic about who needs what when. Yeah. So good to hear about that.
Thank you for staying late.
No problem.
Yeah.
Thank
Did you
you.
go home in
Feel
between?
free to go home, beat the weather.
Okay. All right, get out of here before the storm. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, equity policy update.
Yes, that is me, and I'm just gonna shuffle over a little bit because I feel like I can't see y'all. So this is a yearly policy update. And I just brought along our multi-year equity plan to talk about this. So this is the plan that we originally created back in 2019 as a 3-year plan of goals for our district. We've been updating it just yearly since then. We found after those first 3 years, we wanted to be a little bit more responsive to what teachers and staff and students were saying that we needed each year. So it's worked out better just to do it year by year. So I wanted to kind of give you an update on where we are this year. First, before I dive into the plan, I just want to say, knock on all the wood, when it comes to a interpersonal student level view of equity, we're having an amazing year. Our investigations for HHBs are way down. Incidents of harassment are significantly reduced as opposed to this time last year. Whenever those numbers significantly decrease, I always tend to look at it from a lens of, oh gosh, is it a failure to report? Has something in the culture changed where kids are not coming forward for any reason? Or is it potentially a reduction in incidents? And I really am hesitantly thinking it might be a reduction in incidents. Because overall, kids seem to be really getting along better, talking to each other, managing interpersonal relationships better. We did have a couple things at the secondary level where kids were inappropriately using some language earlier in the fall that I don't think they realized the implication of, and we met with larger groups in an educational aspect to say, hey, you might hear in the media the use of this word or this phrase, especially in social media. That's a huge problem because a kid clicks like on one thing and it can quickly take them down a rabbit hole, and algorithms are created to do that. And then children frequently get socialized into a practice that might not necessarily be pro-social without realizing it. But those educational pieces were highly successful. So there was only one case in the 5 educational sessions that we had this fall with groups at Mill River that were using language we thought had no intention but negative effect where there was repetition of that behavior. So that is all a positive thing. and I am hopeful that we can keep working on that in the future. When it comes to the equity plan, the middle school and high school teachers at the end of last school year, when asking what would you like to do for the beginning of the school year, the majority of responses I got said bring back Corey Smith, who is the consultant that we worked with last year on restorative practices throughout the year. So we brought her back in person. She's all the way down in Georgia, so it is a significant expense, but we used grant funding, federal funding through the CFP to do that, to work on restorative circles with staff. The initial data on doing that circle work with her was really positive. So we can't afford to bring her again in person, and the feedback of doing the online sessions with her was it just wasn't as effective. So we're not doing more of that this school year, but at the end of this school year, we'll see about, continuing to work with her for year 3. It doesn't make sense to bring her for 2 hours. It only makes sense if we can have a full day, which is only in August. But that was year 2 of training with her. So the first year we did principles of restorative practice, and year 2 we did how to do circles. It was amazing. The high school and middle school staff, she said, what do you want the goal to be for this year? And staff said we want the goal to be that we're doing circles in advisory, and we're trying to do this at least 5 times this year. And I really didn't want that to be admin-led goals or consultant-led goals. And I've really been so proud of school staff because I just see it's still going. And very rarely does a single day PD in August still exist, right? In December. So I think that work is going really well, and it's due to the hard work of our staff. When it comes to curriculum and content, we do have an update to our EQS, our Educator Quality Standards, that have come through the state. Educators are going to start working on those in a more meaningful way throughout this year. One of those updates says that we need to be explicitly teaching concepts of equity and inclusion. So, what should that look like? Is kind of something that I want teacher feedback on. So I did put out a stipend request before the stipend deadline of November 1st that said, who would like to work on this with me? Got some teachers from both elementary and secondary that are willing to work on that, so that we can start to look at what that could potentially be. I do not anticipate in our district that being separate classes. I would anticipate it's going to look like a performance indicator that is similar to our transferable skills, where it is a wide lens of how are we making sure that every single student in our classroom feels represented and welcomed and cared for in our classroom, and that we're just using specific language of a performance indicator that runs K-12 vertically aligned like all of our other performance indicators, that teachers will be able to choose if they're choosing that performance indicator. And then we just have to do some collaborative work as school-based curriculum teams to decide where that performance indicator is going to live within our curriculum. Systems and structures, we continue to work on data audits and monitoring for discipline, academic, and attendance data for historically marginalized populations. PLCs at the elementary this year are all about data, looking at attendance, looking at academics, and looking at discipline. Our data does not show any significant disproportionality for historically marginalized groups. For the most part, there are some, except for one area, and that would be students with specialized plans, 504s, and IEPs. That is the one area that we need to continue to work on, making sure that students are fully supported in. When it comes to representation, we just continue to want to make sure that we are looking around in our classrooms and our public spaces and making sure that every family we have here at Mill River and every student we have at Mill River feels like if they are in a space that they feel like they're represented by our spaces. And I think teachers do a really good job of really knowing their kids and every single year building their classrooms around who their kids are. What questions do you have for me?
Yes, Nick.
Corey Smith, Carrie Smith?
Corey,
Corey.
K-O-R-I.
Is there anyone else in Vermont, New England that uses her services? I'm just
Yeah.
forward thinking.
Right.
It's a long trip from Georgia. Can we kind of coordinate, hey, we're gonna use her this day, you can use her another day, that cuts down on transportation and lodging.
Yeah, that's a great
Probably
idea.
hard to do, but
Or combining 2 schools together for 1-day training with her.
So when I meet with the regional assistant superintendents, we have been trying to talk about like, what are you guys doing? Can we like share when we're doing anything expensive? So that is something we're working on. When it comes, she does work with 3 other districts in Vermont, but it becomes more of a competition than a collaboration.
that's what I figured.
They're up north, and we all do PD the same days in August. So like to get her for August this year, I had to sign the contract 4 months in advance and be like,
Everybody
save this
wants
for
her
me,
the,
Corey.
everybody wants her the 27th.
Don't you
so-
dare, exactly, don't you dare give up the 27th, you're mine.
So that may be where we can maybe collaborate a little bit with some of them.
Yeah, with somebody
And that way
regional.
she's getting her most bang for her buck when she's here.
Absolutely.
And we're all getting what we can get.
And staff did choose her 2 years ago. I gave 3 different options of people who do this work professionally with their bios, and this was the one that really resonated the most.
Any other questions on equity stuff?
All right.
So when are you creating like 25, 26 goals?
That's a great question. So it comes so fast.
27.
No. So I usually start creating the goals for professional development and for curricular goals for the year in March. But then it goes through cycles of feedback. So I want to send it through the faculty, the leadership team, and the central office team multiple times. So then it's cemented by May.
All right, thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. Truancy report.
Okay, that would be
This
me.
is from me.
Yep. And I will preface by saying we didn't talk a lot about this, so I threw some things together to get started. And if there's more information that folks want to see that I don't have today, let me know and I will bring it back to you another time. So Andrea had asked, we put a truancy update on the agenda. I think it's worth noting a little bit of background that 2 years ago, actually this might be year 3 now. So 2 full years we've been working with the Rutland County State's Attorney's Office a lot more closely than we ever did in the past. So you go back 4, 5, 6 years and truancy was a little more of a vague, ambiguous process. And the Rutland County State's Attorney's Office was trying to work to coordinate it better and to outline the process in a way that schools in the region were all doing the same thing, which supported the state's attorney's office to be able to do their work. Because what they were seeing was that things were done differently, different places, and it just made it a lot harder for them to accept cases, basically. So we regionally, superintendents all met with some representatives from the office. We had some good conversations initially around what do you do, what works, how do you do it, and then they sent us some resources outlining the process. So we have some pretty firm requirements from them that show up on a affidavit that we have to complete when we are sending a case for truancy. Interestingly still, this is only regional. Different counties may do things differently. That this is not coordinated necessarily the same way anywhere else, which presents some interesting challenges for people like our neighbors over in Slate Valley who have schools in 2 different counties. So they actually have to follow 2 different processes. So what does that actually look like? So when you look at the affidavit is going to require that we jump through a couple of hoops first locally before we ever send anything on. 5-day letter, 7-day letter, 10-day letter. We've been doing that for a long time. That's been pretty standard. What those letters looked like and how they were sent out has been different. Working with the State's Attorney's Office, Rutland County, first year of this, they told us they wanted all those letters certified. And we said, holy cow, that's going to start costing us a lot of money. When a 5-day letter is not anything that should raise any alarms, but you get a certified letter from school, it makes people nervous. So we asked, is there any way that we could have our 5-day and 7-day be a little less formal, and we could maybe incur a smaller cost? Great, they were flexible. So now, as it stands, that 10-day letter is the only one that needs to be certified. So when students have 5 unexcused absences, they're going to trigger that 5-day letter. 7 is going to trigger the 7-day letter. 10 is going to trigger the 10-day letter. That 10-day letter is going to request a meeting with the family so that we can sit down and really talk about what are the challenges, what are the barriers keeping the student from making it to school. Are there ways that we can help and we can support? Or are there maybe community organizations we can start to work with to get you support other ways? When we hit 20 days, that is actually when we complete the truancy affidavit, and we make a call to Department of Children and Families at that point. So that is what we've been requested to do. So day 20 of unexcused absences, we're going to start completing our affidavit. We're going to check the boxes that we've sent the certified letter. We've had meetings with families. We're going to even record details around when was the meeting and, you know, folks in attendance, things like that on the affidavit. We'll be making a home visit at that point if we haven't already. It's not always 20 days that we do a home visit. I think that's important to know. That is where the State's Attorney's Office has it in their timeline of things that need to happen. But there are definitely times where we do a home visit after maybe 5 days. If it's 5 consecutive days and we haven't heard from anybody, that makes us concerned and we want to check in. You know, we would call that a wellness visit. Let's just go and see if somebody's okay. If you've got 5 days and it's 1 day a week for 5 weeks, we're not doing a home visit. But just to give you some examples of why that home visit might happen before we hit that 20-day threshold.
A question.
Yeah,
So
Josh.
in Clarendon, we have a position, or
Yep.
we had, that was basically, that was their role.
Oh, yeah,
Right.
homeschool
So, like,
liaison.
Somebody,
Yes.
yeah, right? And
Yes.
so is that the person who makes that home visit, or is it
Not
someone else who makes
necessarily.
it?
Not great question. That person is going to be spending a lot more time day 1 or 2 or 3 calling home and trying to support with the phone call and, hey, oh, your child is sick. Okay, what can we do? Can we bring you work? Can you come get work? They're going to be doing actually those really small things early on, because our goal with a position like that is earlier intervention and earlier supports being offered.
So home visit is Joe and one of us.
So our official truancy officer, which when we do our reorganization meeting, we're always going to outline who our truancy officer is. The official home visit is our truancy officer, likely an administrator riding out there together. Good question. Coordinated Services Planning Meeting, that is a meeting that's going to pull in some school personnel, is going to pull in some services from the region to sit down and try and work out a plan to support the student being in school. We'll make a referral to Rutland County Diversion, Balance, and Restorative Justice Center. So that's something that we will do before a truancy case is heard. Referral to Rutland Mental Health Services, if that makes sense in the case, and referral to Compass as well. So as we complete the affidavit, these are all pieces of information that they're requesting of us so that they can receive enough information to know that a case is ready to be processed or not. Where in the past, the information that they would get from schools varied greatly. So there were lots of cases that were sent but never picked up. So the goal of the Rutland County State's Attorney's Office was to outline a process in a way that when we did all of our pieces, we would be handing them a case that they could pick up. So doing things in a way that nobody's wasting anybody's time, and we're all working toward the same goal of getting the student back in school and supporting the student and the family. So where it stands now, students that have hit those levels. So Clarendon, let's look at that first. When you see 2 students there at a 7-day letter, that means they've gotten the 5-day letters and they're ready now for the 7-day letters. So those 2 students have moved up into that second category. You'll see Clarendon and Wallingford are pretty similar sized schools, both elementaries. Clarendon's got 2 students at that 7-day, Wallingford's got 3 students, but when you average it, it looks like a similar situation. Tinmouth, Shrewsbury, our smallest schools, you'll notice, look the same too. Elementary tends not to be where we have those truancy problems. Elementary tends to be where we can do a lot of that early work of connecting with families, providing supports, getting students what they need. I have a kindergartner at home, and I can work with my kindergartner and get her in the car and get her to school. When she's 16, that's going to be a very different scenario for me. And I think we absolutely see that when we get to high school, truancy becomes a bigger challenge. You know, students sometimes are driving themselves, and a lot easier to slip through the cracks and start missing days, not have those doctor's notes. My kindergartner, I can encourage her to get out of bed even if she's not feeling great. But if it were her job to get out of bed if she weren't feeling great, because I had already gone to work and she were driving herself, she might not. That would be a case where she wouldn't have a doctor's note, so that wouldn't be a excused absence. So we have, and another thing to think about too is Mill River, you've got approximately the same number of students as all our elementaries combined. So you just have a bigger population there. We are getting towards halfway through the year. We're about a month out from halfway through the year when you get to mid-January, and we have 3 truancy cases. We have some in the pipeline, and definitely some students we're concerned about, and we're doing that work with. But at this point, we have 3 that have gotten to the point where they would be truancy, potential truancy cases, if that makes sense.
I have 2 questions
Yeah.
about this.
Go for
One,
it.
so we know coming out of COVID,
Yep.
lots of kids weren't coming to school.
Yes, attendance was maybe a bigger challenge than behavior, believe it or not.
So for these numbers, is this a number that is stayed pretty steady over the past 3 years? Is this number downish?
I would say
up-ish?
this number looks better than it has previous years. Absolutely.
And then my follow-up question, or not follow-up, it's a different question, is of those numbers,
Yep.
is it a scattershot across grades, or is it more concentrated?
that's a good
Does it feel like
question.
if I'm a 17-year-old, am I not coming to school anymore?
Or am I a freshman?
And in the past, I used to just drop out and I could go get a job and it would be fine, but now we have different expectations.
I will look and I'll tell you that later, but I didn't.
Yeah, that's
do that.
fine. I'm just,
When I pulled
that's
them,
what
I didn't do
when I
that.
asked to see those
No, and
numbers.
that's
Because
a
it's a
good
big
thing.
difference if it's all the freshmen doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
It's
a good
sad no
question.
matter what.
That's a good question.
Yeah,
It's
do
different
we
in-
have like freshmen in 9th?
Yep.
Or do we have,
That speaks more towards I'm able to
9, 10.
drive myself.
yes.
It's
Yeah.
not,
Right.
so the biggest correlation between truancy and any one demographic is students in transitional housing.
Mm-hmm.
Which is super high now until March.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not a specific grade, it really is.
Yeah, it's that. That
It's
makes
that.
sense.
Other questions? That's a good question.
Kim?
Do you hear sometimes that it is an issue with the transportation that's available to some of the kids in transitional housing?
We provide busing. Can
Yep.
we explain the busing for
Yeah.
our?
So we do use grant funding to provide busing, and that includes van use if needed. So it's part of our commitment to students who are in transitional housing.
Yep.
And that's part of Coral's role as the Director of Student Services. She sorts out any supports needed to get students here.
Yeah, and I am happy to comment on that,
hi.
Kim, if you want me to now, I can add to that.
Can you, yeah, Coral, can you just talk about the transportation for some of our transitional or homeless students?
Yeah, definitely, I can. Obviously, the landscape related to our students who have housing insecurity is really precarious. I'm sure you're all, very in the loop on the headlines and things that are happening around the state with that. As far as this conversation relates to like truancy and attendance, our kids that, and this is all of our schools, our kids that need transportation to and from schools relating to housing insecurity are pretty well taken care of. As Jody just said, we have transportation routes that are set up. Connie Erickson collaborates very closely with me to get these kids taken care of. So as far as that goes, actually, believe it or not, these numbers reflect that population much less than you might be inclined to think.
So we do provide.
Yeah.
Bottom line.
Yep,
We do
we do it.
provide to our students.
Yeah, we have to.
As
There
much
are
as
federal
possibly
laws
and,
that,
yeah.
Right now. And what
State
happens
guidelines, we have to.
remains to be seen, but yes, we do. And the other thing that I don't know that folks are aware of, but distance is not necessarily a factor that we're allowed to ignore. So like, for example, we may have kids that are homeless to our school district that live in Burlington. That's not a scenario we have currently, but it is one that I'm aware of that's impacting other districts. And even in those scenarios, we are responsible for providing that transportation. So I think that we do a pretty darn good job here of getting the kids to school and taken care of, and a lot of effort from a lot of people, goes into that, so.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Coral, but I think it's safe to say that the goal is for any given school year that we keep the student in a consistent environment so that we can have at least something that's stable in their life. There may be scenarios where the distance is great and the family actually chooses not to continue in the same school. But if they do choose to continue, we try to always work to make that happen.
Yep, absolutely. All of that is correct.
Thank you.
And I did just, Josh, to answer your question, I did just pull up, you've got 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, all represented, I think, in a way that you couldn't say any one grade level is more represented than another.
So it's not because I started driving.
Yep, yeah, actually.
Anything else that we would, questions or any more we want to talk about, like next time on Truancy or? Okay, thank you.
Interesting thing, sorry, last thing I'll add. Interesting thing, it's a funny, I don't remember which Friday in April it is. Maybe you remember, Jody. The cutoff for truancy cases is something like.
It's almost around tax day.
The second
Yeah.
Friday in April. It's a Friday in April.
Yep.
Which is challenging because sometimes we get to April and students are close, and then our truancy process is really over because we can't, we will keep working with families, but we can no longer submit to the Rutland County State's Attorney's Office, which is interesting.
I guess the only other question, and it's hypothetical, is if we didn't have a truancy officer, is it just a state trooper that would go to it? Or who is
the
the
school's contracted officer that they work with? They don't
Okay.
necessarily
It doesn't have to be in
have it
person in the
appointed
school.
as like their resource officer.
So
Would
with
be
Joe
with
having-
Joe being here, though.
It's
When
very
Joe ha-
helpful. Yeah.
with Joe not available, they have tried hard to give us support when possible. It hasn't always been possible. So there have been circumstances under which 2 administrators, if we feel that it is a place that it, like a situation that's safe enough, we go to it. But then usually it would be me and a school-based, because the school-based knows the family better, and then I just pop with them. Does that make sense?
Yep.
But we kind of dialogue whether it makes sense to or not.
So the only reason I mention that April date is because if we start thinking about truancy cases and you say like, well, do we expect to have 6 by the end of the year? If we have 3 getting towards the midpoint, well, no, not necessarily, because the cutoff is in April, so. Okay,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Bylaws, draft and approval. I don't know who has that.
It's in the
It's
packet.
the add,
It's in the packet, yeah.
added
Community
verbiage for the
engagement.
community engagement.
Right.
Where they wanted to,
That's all
Roles
it
and
is.
responsibilities.
yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't change anything, it just clearly identifies what,
They want to do.
yeah.
Do we have to take action on it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Are we? Yeah.
We have to
That's
approve
what I
it.
thought.
Yeah.
We had to support say we wanted the edits to occur, have it before 5 days.
You have to have 5 days, I believe, yeah.
Which it was.
And then we need 2/3.
It's
What do we need for
2/3 or
bylaws?
3/4, I don't remember. If we need to
2/3.
look, I'll look.
I'm pretty sure it's 2/3.
Okay.
So do we have a motion to accept
Yeah, 2/3.
the changes?
I make that motion to accept the
Thank
change.
you.
I'll second.
Thank you, Gray. Any discussion on it? Further discussion, questions?
I sat in on the last community engagement meeting. I believe this is representative of what you all wanted, only because Carol's not here.
Yeah, she's got COVID.
I just want somebody to validate that this is what,
Yeah, because we did discuss it at the last.
Yeah, this is, I'm on the community engagement committee, and this was the language that we hammered out at our last.
Yep.
Yes.
that's all I wanted confirmation. It reads fine to me.
Any more discussion on it? All right, all in favor of adding this, or editing, or? 1, 2, 3, 4. You are unanimous, Rebecca.
I'll get it updated on the website tomorrow.
Thank you. Okay, so on to committee reports. Personnel is first.
I hate that.
It's your job.
Did I just hear you say that?
We met tonight,
No, I know, but.
and we have some contracts and some resignations, and then some updates. How's that sound? First of all, I'd like to make a motion to offer Marley Rosario position as varsity softball coach.
I'll make that motion.
No, you seconded it.
I'll second.
Thank you. There was some question last time on her salary, which was clarified.
I see that, and the number is zeros.
Reasonable number.
She's gonna be the most well-paid.
Nope.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
We are good.
Good, okay. Next, we have a number of winter coaches at the middle and the high school who are volunteers. And we only have 3, so I'll take the time just to zip through them here. So I'd make a motion that we offer Scott Allen a contract as a volunteer for wrestling. I'd make that motion.
Second.
Discussion.
Oh, I thought you were lumping them again.
Huh?
I thought you were lumping them again.
You have to be
Just
louder
say
than that,
both.
Andrea.
I know. You ever hearing?
I didn't
I
hear
thought
you.
you were lumping them together. Sorry.
I couldn't even tell what she was saying. So don't-
Nick knew.
I know.
I'm on it.
She was projecting towards you.
All those in favor? I said I was gonna split them up.
You did. Maybe
Threw
we
me
thought
off,
you were going to
sorry.
tell us about them individually, and then we would vote on them together.
Sorry.
Yeah, 'cause-
Okay, I'm gonna move right along here.
Go right ahead.
I would make a motion to offer Dan Corey a contract as a volunteer in wrestling.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Thank you. And then lastly, I'd make a motion to offer Ben Clark a contract as middle school basketball volunteer.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
I would like to thank them on their decades of experience
So much
for
experience.
volunteering, and some of them being former graduates.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I got-
Yep, you're absolutely correct. We actually mentioned that in the committee.
Yeah.
It's amazing to have that kind of experience as a volunteer. Okay, resignation. We have a resignation from Annette Parrish. So I would like, her last day was November 15th. So I would like to make a motion to accept Annette's resignation.
I'll second that. Right?
Discussion.
Could I just have clear, like, what is that position?
Annette was self-help in the high school. And I would add, we will absolutely miss her. And we wish her the best in her next endeavor.
And I will be offering her the opportunity for an exit interview. Further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Next one is a resignation from Brian Hill as superintendent. And so I would like to make a motion effective at the end of this school year.
I was going to add that.
I was gonna say, it's not right now. It's June
That's a
30th,
different thing.
Yeah,
25.
I caught myself there. So I'd like to make a motion to accept, with regret, Brian's resignation.
I will regretfully second that.
Discussion.
I'll go through this again because I did it earlier and it wasn't in public. So I will, what if we did not accept his resignation?
I think we've tried that with other people.
Well, I
It
think
doesn't
we
work,
did
'cause
too. And I
It
can't
turns out we don't
remember
actually have to accept anything. They can do whatever they want.
It's not like we can shackle him to his desk.
That was my suggestion on June 29th.
I'm just saying, I asked the question earlier in committee. I just saying.
And I think, great, two interesting things we can think about. One is if somebody is resigning and are breaching their contract by doing so. So walking away from a signed contract,
Yeah.
we don't have to let them. Yes, they can still go,
Yeah.
but there could be some legal recourse that we would have. The other thing is doing things publicly has value, and losing staff is a really interesting thing to look at and think about, especially these days. And I think there's value in folks being aware that the business that we do is, at least the business that the board attends to, is done publicly. So bringing that for approval is the way of making that public.
I was being lighthearted. I think we should.
Oh, yeah, no.
Oh, gosh, we already brought it up.
You mean the handcuffs?
Yeah. there you go.
Well, what I told personnel was only after you've made a really good faith effort to find somebody better. And then you can handcuff me.
And like, lock the doors and like wood and, anyway.
Any further discussion?
Nope.
At this point, do you want to talk about?
Not yet.
Okay.
We got the resignation first.
Yeah, Brian will be sorry to see you go. I'm wondering with that June 30th date, so if we do not find a replacement until after that date, will you, is there consideration of will you be available to help on board and bring your successor up to speed?
I told personnel this. I said, if you call me, I'll answer the call. I'm not at all. My goal would be to support any transition to be as smooth as possible, and I don't, no strings attached to that. That's, whatever. If things play out and it becomes challenging, give me a call. I'm not moving. you know.
You will also answer
I'll-
IT
I'll still be
questions.
here. I'm not going to be a superintendent anywhere else, you know, I'm not, yeah. I'll be around, and my goal is to have the summer off after June 30th. So if there's transition work to be done after that, yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all. I still care about this place and will care about it for a long time.
Any further discussion?
Can we just?
All those in
before we
favor?
talk anymore.
Thank you. And thank you, Brian.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank all of you.
Which brings us to the next point in personnel. Finding a successor. I have contacted the Vermont School Boards Association, Sandra Cameron, and as I had mentioned, we'll be asking assistance from the Vermont School Board Association in helping us with the search for a new superintendent. And as I think I said before, they were very helpful in our search for Brian, although we didn't have to go terribly far. But the point was, with their help, we set up interviews, put things on School Spring, advertised the position on School Spring. We set up interviews with the folks. They helped us develop questions. I mean, and I can say this publicly, I'm not a huge fan of the Vermont School Boards Association, because I've said it before. But in this instance, I think they're tremendously helpful. And if you don't believe me, ask BJ Brent, because he was part of that. He and I are the only two left. So, but, I just want to, I don't want to bore you to death with this, but Andrea and I have a conversation with Sandra Cameron from the Vermont School Boards Association tomorrow. From there, all that's going to take place in that conversation is a plan moving forward. And I want to make it clear that Andrea and I aren't making any decisions, and all decisions will be shared with the full board. But basically, the last time we put together a search committee that had 4 board members, 3 teachers, 2 central office staff, 1 building administrator, and 1 support staff. And part of the difficulty is it's time consuming. We were meeting 3 times a week back then. And so what will happen is we'll be sending out an email to those groups looking for folks to volunteer. And then once we narrow the field, and at that point, we bring in the other stakeholders, if you will, parents, students, community members, that kind of thing. And so then they participate in the final interview process, as well as the committee members. So, you know, I don't want anyone to walk away thinking, well, you're being excluded. No, you're not. You're
Yeah,
really
don't
not.
think that when Len and I talk to Sandra tomorrow, we've got everything set up and we're good. No, we're not doing that.
Which is why we're calling her.
Yeah, so we're just calling her to say, okay, we need to start the process. This is what we might be looking for. This is, you know, and as Len had said earlier, we're actually a month ahead of our schedule
Yeah.
with doing it.
Yeah.
It's just gonna be probably hard.
Any
Yeah.
questions? And as I say, after we talk with her tomorrow, we will get back to the full board. We'll let you know what next steps are. And we'll get out that email so that folks can think about it, and we'll move forward, okay?
With that thought,
Mm-hmm.
yes. Our
Okay.
next
Oh, okay.
update, put that in there
Yep.
instead of doing it
Mhm.
personal.
You all set over there?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. We did not establish a date for the next Personnel Committee because it would be January 1st. And there is not a meeting January 1st. So we'll talk at the next board meeting about,
On the 18th.
I don't know if community engagement still wants to have theirs. We shouldn't have a lot in terms of personnel, but the superintendent thing is going to be important. Okay? I'd be done.
You'd be done. Policy.
Policy, that's me. Our next meeting is next Tuesday at 5:30.
And isn't there a, not this meeting because the timing with the Herald is challenging still, but next meeting I'll have on agenda building D6 substitute teachers for second read.
Yes.
Okay.
And then, one quick notable, Gray, if you want to check your emails regarding a survey, that would be great.
I will do that.
You're the last one I'm looking for feedback on. And then,
No problem.
buildings and grounds.
Yes, go right ahead.
We met on November the 25th. We talked about a lot of things at Wallingford. We did the dishwasher. We talked about the cooler. We talked about the outbuilding. We talked about flooring. We talked about the gate extensively, which we'll table until it's on the agenda
It's on the agenda.
for
For the
2 weeks from
18th.
now. We talked about Shrewsbury heating. And all of these things, Tim is working on developing proposals and getting bids and waiting for people to get back to him. So that will be coming to a board near you very soon. What did I miss? I don't think I missed
When's
anything.
your next meeting for P&G?
Not scheduled, because we have been meeting, it alternates, either the last Monday or last Tuesday, which in December happens to be vacation.
Oh, okay.
So,
That makes
I have a
sense.
question.
absolutely.
Can you just give a little bit more update on the Shrewsbury Mountain School heat pump? I know you said you discussed it, but so are you waiting on bids still?
So we have bids on the pumps. We know what the cost is. We're waiting on bids back from the electrician.
Right, because it's basically, because Tim is general contracting the work. So the actual installation of it is going to be in-house like we did in Tinmouth. It's just the auxiliary parts are the waiting for.
Yep. So we have 60% of all of the bids in. It's just a matter of getting the final pieces to plug in so that we can say the entire project costs X.
And that, that heating will cover basically the rooms, but
Every-
not the auxiliary spaces.
Yep.
Okay.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I guess I think knowing that it's like, feeling time sensitive with the winter and everything, I'm just wondering, I know it's hard to know like time frame, but from like when we have the bid and when the board can say, is it like you'd have to come to the board and say go,
Yes.
and then,
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think the intention is to look at the 18th because Tim put the RFP out in the Herald, and I think the deadline was something like the 16th so that he'd have everything to bring the 18th. But the work that was being done at Shrewsbury, gosh, 3 weeks ago or so, a month ago, that's completed and heating system is working. So, you know, I hear you that it's time sensitive, but I don't think it's the most time sensitive. We don't have much of a, trying to think of the best way to put it. They have two heating systems right now. They have one that covers the regular part of the building and then the auxiliary space. Both are functioning. So,
Okay.
so they have functional heat everywhere. The heat pumps will be more efficient, and that's fantastic, but they will also provide cooling in the summer, which will start to mitigate what we're seeing more of, which is higher levels of humidity and environmental problems due to the higher levels of humidity. So I think Tim's huge priority is get it in before the summer, if that makes sense.
So the issue with what the teacher is saying that their classrooms were feeling really cold, that's resolved?
The set point overnight is 66 degrees at Shrewsbury. So that building at 2 a.m. is 66 degrees. So in the morning, it's trying to get up from 66 to 70. And what we've seen, things happen sometimes. If one of the, we had a funny thing happen the other day where the blower had a copper wire attached to it to make it run, and the blower vibrates. The copper wire, because it wasn't stranded, it was solid, the solid copper wire slowly wiggled out. So they replaced it with a stranded copper wire. Well, the stranded copper wire is not going to wiggle out. So things absolutely happen, even with a fully functional system, where you get in the morning and you go, oh, it's chilly. We need to get that turned back on and get our room up to temperature. So those things absolutely happen. I mean, stuff like that pops up in all of our buildings occasionally. So I don't want it to sound like everything is perfect always.
And what's the minimum temperature for a pre-K class?
Pre-K is going to be 65 degrees a foot off the floor, which is why we heat the room to 70, because our thermostats to reach 70 are not a foot off the floor.
And let's say, so if it's not at that temperature,
Yep.
whose decision is it
Yep.
to say we need to be out of that room, or we need to cancel pre-K, or
So-
what's that
Yep.
chain of command?
So what's going to happen is in the morning, if folks get in and they see that things are not quite where they hope they are, they're going to be talking to their custodian who's there during the day. And if he can resolve the issue, fantastic. If he can't resolve the issue, he's going to be calling down to Tim, and we're going to be working with we've got 2 folks during the day who do not just custodial work, but more mechanical work. So they may be running up there to support our day custodian at Shrewsbury. If it's something that they can't resolve, we have a fantastic contractor who, like, every time we call them lately, we had a contractor who we were kind of struggling with getting timely work done, but we've switched to somebody else who is incredibly responsive, and we give them a call and 45 minutes later they're up there, which is great. When we think about canceling, we've reached out to Agency of Human Services to have a conversation with them about those regulations, because you say for a pre-K classroom it's supposed to be 65 degrees a foot off the ground. So we asked them the question of, well, what happens if that blower stops working and we can fix the blower, and your room is 63 but it's warming up and we're going to hit regulation in an hour. Should we cancel program, should we not? Guidance from them is that's not necessarily a scenario where you cancel program. It's a regulation and we always want to follow it, but there are going to be times where we don't always meet that regulation for, due to unforeseen circumstances. As long as we're able to remedy that in a reasonable amount of time. The challenge is nobody's going to tell you exactly what a reasonable amount of time is, and everybody's going to have a different opinion on that. So our goal has always been, if we don't have things where they need to be by mid-morning, then we've got a challenge. When we were doing, when our boiler room had that flood here at Mill River 2 years ago, what we had communicated to everybody was, if we're ever in a scenario where we're going to be below 60 all day, we're done. We're not having school. And we ended up having 2 days in this building that, because of the weather and the repair work, we were going to be below 60. So we did cancel. But we definitely had some days in this building where it really was probably 62 all day long. But that's the threshold that we've sort of internally set and what we've tried to use, if that makes sense. Good questions.
I forgot where we are.
Community engagement.
Okay.
We just wrapped up B&G.
Carol is not here.
No.
I could share out a little bit.
Can you?
Sure.
Okay.
So at the November 20th meeting, we discussed community conversations, feedback loop, to make sure we're getting information back to people who ask questions at our meetings, and we need to find the information or direct them to the correct person. So there's details about that that are linked to our meeting minutes that are on the website. We also clarified the committee's roles and responsibilities that you all just approved for the bylaws. Our next meeting is going to be December 18th at 6 o'clock here at Mill River, and our focus is going to be the 50th anniversary of the high school. So that's pretty exciting. We hope we'll get some community input about that. I know there's a lot of pride in our community for this high school, so that'll be great. Some upcoming events that we could attend that are on our agenda are December 7th, which is this Saturday. The Wallingford Elementary School is having a holiday craft fair from 9 a.m. to 2:30. December 10th is the Clarendon's PTO meeting. December 11th is Mill River's winter concert, vocal concert at 7 o'clock. December 17th, Shrewsbury has their winter concert at 6:30. And Wallingford has a caroling singing at 6 o'clock the same day, December 17th. And Timoth has a winter concert December 19th at 6 o'clock. So all of those are events that people might want to attend.
And isn't tonight the band concert?
Tonight was, yeah, it's probably,
Here.
I'm not sure if it's over,
Yeah.
but yes. Also, I just wanted to comment that at the bottom of our regular board meeting agendas, it kind of states that the public comment, in the public comment instructions part F needs to be amended because community conversations now occur on the third Wednesday of each month as part of the community engagement meeting. So it's not a separate meeting. I think it says something about the third Monday or something, but that's not the way it is now. We've just decided to put that during our regular community engagement meetings.
Is that something, Pat, can you bring language to the next board meeting for everyone to review? And, because this was something that, you see the updated May 2021, this was something that the board agreed on. So if we want to update that, let's bring that to the next meeting, if
Sure.
that's okay.
Yeah, that'll be fine, but just so that it's true and updated, because it's not what we're doing. What we're doing isn't what's written on that paper.
Yep.
Okay. It might confuse people.
And I did want to mention, going back to the superintendent search, that the last time we did that, there were several community conversations that were open to the public so that they could ask questions that they may be looking for answers and what they may be looking for in a superintendent. So we'll be following through on that as well.
Okay, negotiations.
The plan is to have negotiations tomorrow.
First meeting tomorrow, not
At
an officially
3?
warned meeting
Not a
because it's
warned
not the
meeting, it's,
committee.
yeah,
We're going
it's
to
not
meet
a
with the
committee.
association tomorrow. Yeah.
And,
Okay.
you know, assuming it'll happen, because it's not snowing now, so
We'll see.
it's not.
Don't say that, Josh. Finance, who's presenting on that?
I can present on that.
Okay.
And can I ask about negotiations for tomorrow? Is it possible to get a hybrid link for that?
Oh, yeah, and I had that on my list to do, Stephen. I will do that first thing in the morning.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So finance, we haven't had a meeting since, I believe, the 29th, the end of October, maybe. But where we're at with finance is that there is a draft of the fiscal year 26 budget that we will be seeing and discussing on the 12th. Our next meeting is going to be on the 12th at 5:30. That's kind of a big one. If you're going to come to one finance meeting a year, that might be the one to check out. We will, hopefully come out of that meeting with the budget to bring to the full board at our next full board meeting on the 18th. We recently got the December 1st letter. Brian sent out a nice kind of quick bit of information about that to us. I think the takeaway, the December 1 letter is showing an average of a 5.9 property tax bill increase is predicted For the state, I think the thing to note is that last year when it came out, it was something closer to an 18 or 20% and then dropped down to more of a 14% when there was some state action taken. So 5.9 is actually, you know, a much easier increase on folks. And I think for us, hopefully that means, well, I think it means that there's probably many districts around the state are keeping their budgets very trim this year is part of that number. And hopefully the sense around the state won't be, folks, hopefully voters will be able to really consider actual budgets and not feel wrapped up in state hype, I guess I would say. Yeah. Moving on from that, though, we have some payroll warrants. So our first payroll warrant, November 22nd, in the amount of $637,055.95. And from November 29th, in the amount of $7,454.73, for a total of $644,510.68. Do we have a motion to accept this payroll warrant?
Oh, sure, I'll do that. Oh, wait, not a second.
Second.
3 seconds. All right, any discussion? All in favor? Somebody can help me count that.
Yep, you're good.
Everybody.
All right. And our accounts payable warrants. We have a general fund in the amount of $72,824.12. General fund in the amount of $2,935.49. ASP in the amount of $881.71. And lunch in the amount of $63,035.79 for a total of $139,677.11. And apparently no student activity warrant for this period. So do I have a motion to accept these payable warrants and to accept these warrants?
Yep. Me.
A second?
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor?
You are unanimous.
Excellent. Great, thank you. Again, our next finance meeting is going to be on the 12th at 5:30, and everyone is encouraged to join. So we'll be discussing not only the draft 26 budget, we will also be discussing, we may get to our roles and responsibilities for the bylaws, but we'll also, the major item we'll be discussing surplus, and specifically related to some strategy around buildings and grounds. And some of these big ticket items like the floors for the district, and how we might move forward and keep those big 5-year goals in our line of sight. Big things being discussed on the 12th. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay, so do we have a Transact other legal business? I know that I forgot to say this in the beginning, but I want to say congratulations to our educators that received awards last month up at UVM. We had a few on there to receive awards, so I just want to say congratulations to them. I was finally catching up on.
Justin Walker and Aaron Closhie.
Yeah, I thought there was another one. No? Maybe not.
And we had
Never
put those
mind.
ones, in the Herald, I think, as a community
Okay.
note, too.
I would also take a moment to remember
Yes.
Larry Spencer, a longtime bus driver and custodian for the Mill River District. Great individual.
I'd also like to remember one of our graduates who was tragically killed before Thanksgiving in a car accident too, so
Yes.
it'd be a great loss to the community also. Okay, so on the agenda we have,
Budget is our big one. So
Okay.
typically, we don't put a lot more than budget. I don't think we have huge things in addition. We said a little hiring update.
yes,
The B and G will have.
The gate.
gate update. Yep.
And then, Pat, if you can get me guidelines for public comment, like a revised, we can do
Yep.
that, I think, pretty darn quickly. So I don't think that's too bad of a meeting to do all of those, because some of those are smaller ones.
Yeah, like,
Policy will have one.
You'll have your
have one
D6
read. Yep.
for second read. Got it? Awesome. Anything else we need to do that December 18th? I think budget's really the big one.
yeah. Any
Okay.
cleanup stuff before break?
Nope, I think we're in good shape. If we get budget on the 18th, I think that's fantastic.
Okay. Good. All right. Executive session. We actually do need an executive session tonight, in regards to a grievance. And I need to find my terminology, because I'm not good at this. I don't even, where's my cheat?
Oh, yeah, flip it over, maybe. Oh, never mind, here.
Glenn?
This one I think is easier.
Okay.
He's got my cheat sheet here. We want this finding, that premature public knowledge would place the board at a substantial disadvantage.
So after making a specific finding that premature public knowledge would place the board at a substantial disadvantage, executive session is permitted in regards for a grievance.
Yep, so I think Andrea's
And-
making a motion that we
yes, I
find
am.
that right now.
Yes.
I will second that finding.
Thank you very much. Do we have, all in favor? Sorry.
Nope, all good.
Okay. Do we have a link
Yes, I sent one
to everybody there?
yep.
Okay, perfect. Let me actually,
Was that?
Did you? Mike, did you?
Now you have to make a motion to go into executive.
so I make a motion, let me find the link so I can pull everybody up on my computer and,
Oh, I was just gonna use mine. Don't worry
Oh.
about it. Don't worry about it.
Oh, you're gonna make a motion to go into executive.
okay,
session.
so I make a motion to go into executive session.
And I'll second that.
Thank you. Got it. From executive session at 9:20
20.
is when we left the room and wandered over here. And I don't know which one it is. We literally, no action taken in executive session, and I would like to adjourn at whatever time it is.
9:21.
9:21
By consensus.
by consensus, so have a good night. Thank you, guys.